All right, we're going to call to order the September 6th meeting of the West Sacramento City Council, the Redevelopment Successor Agency, and the Financing Authority. We're going to begin tonight, as we do each week, with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'd like to invite our guests to join the council and staff in the pledge, which tonight is going to be led by Supervisor Oscar Villegas.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The council did meet in closed session this evening to confer with our real property negotiator regarding the 1200 Linden Road property that's noted in our agenda, to confer with our legal counsel regarding the Universal Limousine versus the City of West Sacramento. No action was taken on either of those items, and also to consider initiation or intervention in a legal action, and no action was taken. All right, so with that, we're going to proceed to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the City Council. As is noted on our agenda, we're prohibited by state law from having a discussion or taking any action on issues that are raised under item 1A, but it is an important opportunity for a public forum. We ask that anyone wishing to address the council on item 1A or any of the other agenda items this evening to please fill out one of the yellow cards that's available near the front door and turn it into the city clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer that we use to make sure that everyone gets a chance to be heard. And to that end, we ask that all the comments be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Also in front of the clerk is a flip chart, and that simply indicates which agenda item the council is currently considering. We take the cards for each individual. The 3-minute allocation it's not transferable. So if 6 people have given you their names and their cards, we don't. It's not a tradable commodity like carbon emissions. But we welcome everyone's participation in the hearings. We recognize that for some folks, speaking in public can cause some anxiety, hives, other allergic reactions. So we do ask that there not be any boos or cat calls or even applause or other demonstrations, and that we try to maintain a civil discourse in the chambers. We take the yellow cards all the way up to the conclusion of the staff report on any particular agenda item. This doesn't apply to item 1A, in which there is no staff report, but for all other agenda items, once the staff report's complete and the council's questions or the public testimony has begun, we don't take additional speaking requests. So if you're here for item 15, as an example, just be sure that before the end of the staff presentation on that item, that you submit the card to the clerk. So with that, we have several requests to speak under item 1A, and we're going to start with Dana Christie, who's going to be introduced by Supervisor Villegas, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I don't want to take too much time, just to simply introduce Dana, who's now at the helm of our wonderful library that we have here in West Sacramento. She's also responsible for the Clarksburg Library, and I know we have a tremendous affinity for library services that offers a real portal for our community to further educating ourselves. And so without further ado, Dana Christie.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for this opportunity to introduce myself. As he mentioned, I'm Dana Christie and the new County Regional Manager for Yolo County, and including also Yolo and Knights Landing. But in addition to introducing myself, I just wanted to let you know some of the exciting things going on at the library right now. We're now checking out Chromebooks and hotspots. So for people that don't have internet access, they can come to the library. Hopefully, if we have some available, they've been pretty popular. We're also expanding our e-library services. So we have, in addition to downloadable books and magazines, you can check out audiobooks. 50 popular magazines were recently added to the collection. We're also, programming-wise, still coordinating the Yolo County Nonprofit Leaders Alliance, which has been around for 5 years, and that group exists to foster collaboration and education and networking among our nonprofit community members. And I'd like to thank Councilmember Sandine for her support with that group. Next month in Davis and in West Sacramento, we'll be having some mini film festivals and panel discussions on different aspects of homelessness. We'll also be featuring an art exhibit with art created by people experiencing homelessness, and we're going to be doing a supply drive for YCCA's Community Giveaway Day. And the library continues to offer several story times, including those for the Learning Ladder preschool visitors that come by. And we're soon to be doing story times once a week over at the West Gateway Place apartment community. Our homework center just opened up. We have a full house with 36 kids and a waiting list of 15 more, so that's exciting. For adults, we continue to have our monthly book club as well as hosting the What's Happening Seniors get-togethers, and we recently started a Books by Mail program where people who can't get to the library can still receive a curated collection of library materials sent to their house. They can return it postage-free. So if you know anybody, feel free to share that. And we recently also put citizenship corners in each of our branches where people who are trying to pass their citizenship tests can come and check out materials and get other resources for passing that test. And we also have English conversation groups over at the West Sacramento Library. So without taking all my time, I want to make sure I leave enough to thank you all for your support, and we couldn't do what we do without it. We couldn't serve as many Sacramentans without your support, so thank you, and I look forward to many years of service.
Terrific. All right, Dana, thanks so much. The Turner Library is one of the city's most longstanding and important cultural and educational institutions, and it has, I mean, when we incorporated as a city, the library was about 1 square feet, had no equipment. It was full of heart and learning, and I know I spent a lot of time there myself, especially when I first moved here. And it was an anchor point for so much that was happening in the community. And it was the friends of the library and the city and some key city staff and our colleagues at the county and Supervisor Villegas and his predecessor, Supervisor McGowan, the various county librarians over time that have just invested so much money, but also lots of heart and soul and belief in creating a fabulous library. And it's so much of a greater asset than it was even a decade ago. And it's just to hear your description right now of all the things that are happening at the library and all the innovations and all the adaptation that I think when we first did the library, when Supervisor Villegas was leading the library project for the city, and folks in the community were questioning, aren't libraries obsolete? Aren't they going away? We're all on the internet now. And it's really terrific to see how you're not just keeping up with the changes, but really getting ahead of them and helping everyone in the community to be able to keep learning, lifelong learning, and to keep connecting and to keep taking advantage of the resources to improve their themselves and their own community. So thanks so much, and thanks to Supervisor Villegas as well. All right, next is James Kennedy. Oh, there you are.
How are you, Your Honor? I'm here to talk about the Linden Lake, Touchstone Lake. We are, for the last 2 days, we are experiencing a toxic algae bloom within the lake. And most of the fish have died, and they've washed up on the shore. And it's green algae. When it starts growing, it absorbs the oxygen in the water, and basically the fish can't breathe. So it's a private lake, but it's across the street from an elementary school, and it's basically a health hazard because the geese that swim in the lake, they walk into the park and poop everywhere and poop along the sidewalks. And unfortunately, when I was walking my dogs 2 days ago, trying to take pictures of the dead fish, I think one of my dogs ate some goose poop, and now he's very ill. So I really wish that the city could convince the Touchstone Board to get with it. Apparently, there used to be a water pump there. We had a problem during the drought back in 2015, where a few fish died, and but the water was so low, and we actually, I believe, somebody here convinced the fire department to test their equipment. And they pumped in about 40,000 gallons of water, which helped a little bit. But thank God we got the rains. But right now we have this very toxic situation, And even though it's a private lake, you have wildlife flying through. You know, the Canadian geese like to stop there, and plus the kids, and then the poop is out on the public sidewalk and in the public park. And I tried calling Water Resources. They basically explained to me what was happening as far as the algae bloom. And I really wish that somebody could convince the homeowners association to fix the pump. Was the problem that I understood. There was a pump that used to pump fresh water in there, and it broke, and they didn't want to spend the money. But this started right after they resurfaced the streets, and I noticed a little bit of a toxic algae bloom, but it disappeared. But then this was about 2 weeks ago, and now it's just devastating. Everything's dying. So just to let you know, a lot of people are upset about it, and it's on the Nextdoor website. I don't have time to read my friend's statement, but we really need to get something done. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Rochelle, Redmond, you're in the same place. Welcome.
Yeah, I haven't been here in a couple years, and there's
Yeah.
one thing missing tonight, and that is the man that used to sit in that chair, Mr. Bill Lau. I came tonight on a spur moment. I was just at Walmart, and the speed trailer has been sitting there on Jefferson near the police department between when you leave Safeway and you go over the railroad tracks and then you head towards Triangle Court. That speed trailer's been sitting there 2 months. And I feel that it would be a much better use in any of our neighborhoods in West Sacramento. I don't know how many speed trailers we have, but that is the path of the police department. There are so many cops in that stretch between Safeway and Sacramento Avenue that I don't understand why it's staying there so long. So I would like to see it moved around, or maybe an explanation to myself of why it's sitting there for 2 months. The other thing is, I had made contact with your landscapers one day out here on West Capitol. We've had a lot of pedestrians hit on West Capitol. If you've ever drive down West Capitol, I'm always going the speed limit because you've got to watch for these pedestrians in those crosswalks. And the landscaping, when it was put in, when City Hall was put in here, those bushes are so tall. I don't have a truck. I'm in a low car, so I cannot see oncoming when I'm turning into City Hall. I asked the landscaper, habla inglés? Sí. I said, can you cut those down? We can't see the traffic. He didn't do it. I went the next day, and they just trimmed around it. They didn't trim them down. I asked him to trim it down so that we can see. So I'd like to see something done about that. Also, too, our municipal code, I didn't bring the papers with me, but have you seen those yellow investor signs all over our town? Those are under the municipal code as billboards. They are illegal. Investor signs everywhere. Yellow investor signs on every intersection in our city. And what they're doing, they must be doing it at night with a tall ladder. They're putting them up so high that you have to call Public Works and have them removed because an average person cannot remove those signs. And, you know, there are restrictions on yard sale signs, and I don't see where it's fair that somebody's advertising in our city, and that's not the way you're supposed to advertise. And they're in other cities too. So I'd like to see it cleaned up. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Crystal Watts.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, I wanted to start out by saying I'm speaking about the NEST project. I'm not in opposition of the project, just its current location. During a NEST town hall meeting, the project lead cited various historical facts about the Clarksburg Trail and the Southport area in general. What he neglected to mention, or show on most of his online marketing and maps of the NEST area, is the TK through 8th grade school site and playground located within 76 feet of this project. This isn't a new school site that a developer may have just forgotten about or could have missed on a map. This is a school site that was built in the 1950s and encompasses one of the oldest, longest-standing buildings in the Southport area. The Our Lady of Grace School campus is easily the oldest building within 100 feet of this proposed project. The project lead told me that the city chose the location. Several council members are publicly listed as supporters of this project and its location. Some have even spoken out publicly with local media on the desire to place this project in its current location, no matter the opposition. My questions to you are these. Please tell me why risk to the health and safety of even one child isn't enough to change the plans on a project that hasn't broken ground. With the exception of a dismissive TV interview about the tasty caramel macchiato offered at a business close to the proposed project, you have not brought any light to the real concerns of your constituents that think having this project so close to a local school's playground could be problematic. Why is having a rest stop that overlooks a school's playground being considered in a city that has close to 150 registered sex offenders? I want to finish by saying that, again, I'm not in opposition of the project, just its location. What does the city have to lose by moving it? You can still get a project built and know that you did your best to protect your community's children and support our needs as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrice Griffith? And Patrice will be followed by Andrea Peters.
Good evening. I am a resident of West Sacramento, of course, and the parent of 3 children here in West Sacramento, ranging in age from 2, 9, and 16, who attend Our Lady of Grace School, a local daycare, as well as River City High School. Although I fully support the idea of the nest, I share previously stated public safety concerns. Due to concerns of child predators, loitering, drug use, and alcohol consumption of unsavory people in similar rest stops, concerned citizens and Our Lady of Grace parents, as well as Assemble Sacramento, are in the midst of exploring alternate locations of the nest. I ask that you do the same and question your support of the proposed location only, not of the nest idea. Even 100 feet away toward Lake Washington would be a better location because the nest wouldn't have an elevated view of the OLG playground. It wouldn't be located behind the vacant Target Garden Center, and it would be more visible since it is closer to the fire station and adjacent to a more visible street. Please consider the safekeeping of our community's children and the proposed location. I hope that the city wants to work with those concerned citizens in the same vein of good faith as Assemble Sacramento. I thank those members who have communicated with concerned citizens, and I feel it's important to take the next step in order to preserve our children's future.
Thank you. Andrea Peters? And Andrea will be followed by Mike Costello.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Andrea Peters, and I am a West Sacramento resident and a concerned Our Lady of Grace parent. On August 24th, I attended the Bike Nest Town Hall meeting held at Our Lady of Grace School. I want to follow up on some concerns that I have. And let me start by saying, like my former colleagues over here, I'm not against the nest. I am just concerned about the location. In order for me to support Assemble Sacramento and the Clarksburg Trail Bike Nest project, I need to see a commitment to address the concerns and solutions proposed on August 24th. Before this project moves any further in the planning and approval process, the community must be provided alternative locations for the nest, the cost to build at these locations, additional steps that will need to be added to the project if chosen, the time frame to implement if approved, and the benefits and risks of using these locations. With this information, I would be more willing to look at alternatives that could be put in place at the existing proposed location. Behind Westfield Village Elementary School, there is a rest area similar to the proposed nest. My family lives 3 blocks from this school and utilize the park next to the school. I do not feel that this rest area has been beneficial to our community. Prior to the rest area being installed, there was occasional trash to be found at the park. Since the installation of the rest area, the amount of trash in the park has increased, and among the trash, I have found condoms, needles, glass bottles, and broken glass bottles. My family no longer utilizes this park. Since the inception of the City of West Sacramento, our community has grown in leaps and bounds, and as a community, we have had to work very hard to become the city that we are today. And we would not be the city that we are today if we did not have city council members, both past and present, and community leaders and members who took the initiative and who did the work to implement a vision that many in surrounding cities thought we could never, ever be. However, as a city, we have had growing pains, and some of the visions for our city have been implemented at the cost of our community members. And while I value a for the greater good of our community attitude, sometimes that type of enthusiasm leads to failed projects that have unintended consequences, and especially for projects that lack community support, divisiveness within our community, and a lack of faith in our community leaders. On the behalf of my family, I ask that Assemble Sacramento and City Council take a step back from this project and work with our community members to find the best location for the nest. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Mike Costello. And Mike will be followed by Derek. And Derek, I'm just as bad with everyone else's name as they are with mine, so I think it...
Noaves? Is it Noaves?
Novice.
Noves.
No worries. Okay, great.
Thanks for having us here.
Mike's as bad as me, so...
I'm a Bridgeway Island resident of about 15 years. I love the little pathway behind my house. I don't love the fact that last week I broke up some 8th graders smoking weed behind my house on that pathway. Pathway is a great attraction. It's also an attractive nuisance because it's hidden out of view from the streets. I'm here to support the nest. I love the nest. When I saw the project idea last year, I really brushed over the details of it because I thought this is a cool idea. This is a great way to activate the trail, get people out who are walking, running, biking, etc., out and about, a place to congregate, rest at the nest, get some water, etc. So I didn't really pay much attention to exactly where it was. Seeing that it's right behind OLG where my kids go to school, I now understand why there's a lot of concern about this. It's going to be an attraction where it is. It's also going to be an attractive nuisance. And I believe that we're all naive to say it's not going to be an attractive nuisance several hours a day. And when we have the opportunity to relocate it to a better location to where the adjacent neighbor can give full support as opposed to very marginal, if any, support, would be a great thing as well. If OLG community can get behind this and support it somewhere else, I believe we will if it can be relocated. Finally, I know that the nest is located in a spot to activate the east side of town center. I know Chris Ledesma has often said, we want an east gateway to the town center. And I think that's a great idea. I think that's a fantastic idea. And I think that the current path that connects the branch line trail to the town center should be widened. It should be enhanced. It should be landscaped and made better, but not a place to park and loiter. So I'm a huge fan of all of these things, but the location where it currently is flawed. And really, other than conversations from Assemble Sacramento, which just seem to pacify us, just say, oh yeah, we're going to talk about this, we're going to hold this up. I haven't seen any legitimate, deep conversation about where else it can go, that the entire community can get behind it and support it, as opposed to a large community next door, immediately adjacent to it, and not supporting it. So I'm just pitching to you all that we're here to support it, but we want to see it relocated, and I would personally love to see that as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike. And Derek, no ice?
Thanks, everyone. I was not expecting to do this an hour ago. I was busy training on my bicycle by the trail. So
First off, I came here kind of with a different mindset. I wasn't aware that there was such a promotion. I'm on behalf of the Nest, by the way. I do favor the Nest. I don't see any reason why it needs to be relocated. I know there's been a lot of time and spent and energy towards thinking about where it should go to avoid some issues with our members of our community, but I would rather us spend more time on education rather than relocation. I know that we're concerned, or the community's concerned about who is going to be around this area smoking weed or garbage or drinking, but if that were the case, then maybe you should go take a look at the lake, because there are a lot of fishermen drinking there during the day as well. So if that is the case, then I believe that the idea that we're going to attract negativity is somewhat hypocritical. I would just rather see us put energy into educating our community, spending time in the community, and helping people clean up rather than just relocate the Nest. I appreciate that it's going to go up on a quarter mile, but I just don't see that we have to put so much energy into relocating something a quarter mile when we can spend some time cleaning it up instead. So, but I do support the Nest, and thank you, OLG, for wanting to move it. I just don't find the energy and the need to put the energy into that direction. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, those are all the requests we have under item 1A, and the city manager, would you provide a brief summary on the status of the Nest project?
If I could, the staff has brought this before the council before in terms of a real conceptual standpoint. We're treating it like any other project. On the week of August 14th, Assemble Sacramento did submit their proposal. Staff is reviewing it now. In the next couple of weeks, we will get back to Assemble Sacramento on that. Location could be an issue. We have not convened on that yet, but we will. And then further, the project will come back to the council before it's obviously approved.
All right, but the project, so I'm reviewing the memo that we have in front of us. The project has been approved. The final specs and that sort of thing will come back. But
We'll come back.
Right, okay. Yeah, I mean, this has been a challenging conversation for a lot of reasons. Some of the very best, maybe most of the very best things in our community have happened because of individual people or small businesses taking a chance and stepping forward and doing something in town. And because the city doesn't have the resources to do much of anything all by itself. Our discretionary budget is not much bigger than any of our individual household discretionary budgets at this point, thanks to the state ripoffs and everything else. We don't have any money. So the projects that happen in the community that stand out, whether it's the Kaboom Disney Park or the Bridgeway Lakes playground, have happened because individuals or private things like YOLO Brew and Bike Dog that were illegal when they started. They violated the rules. Great things have happened in our community because people step up and people in town rally around them and support volunteerism and initiative by their neighbors. And really, that's the only way that community gets built, the only way that community happens. And I know the community treasures that about West Sacramento, that our small town feel and connection and our history and the bonds of family and friendship and neighborhood are important in supporting that kind of work, because we all do live together. And this has been it's been a difficult 6 weeks, frankly, I have never seen a response to individuals acting in a charitable community way being attacked so deeply for their motives and for the way that they've done their work, and with the terms like sexual predators and other things thrown around that, for me, given my own identity and my own history in this society, when folks have used terms like pedophiles and sexual predators on the fly with no evidence and no data, simply to raise fears in other people, it's a problem. And I watched that happen in this case with just community volunteers. I saw some flyer that said the developers were building the Nest. And there's no developer building the Nest. These are folks who stepped up and said, hey, city doesn't have the resources to do a good thing. We live here, we want to do something good, we'll volunteer and we'll go raise money, we'll volunteer, we'll recruit people to donate their labor and time to make plans, and that's what makes the community vital. And we always disagree about the specific things. Some people thought we had too many breweries in town, or why do we need more burgers? Or Jess, why do you need to be making ice cream? What we really need is frozen yogurt. And it's not that we all have to agree on everything, but how we disagree with each other, and how we treat each other as neighbors, and how we demonize one another for trying to do the right thing, even if we don't agree, matters. And I know it's hard given the national conversation, or not conversation, but the way that national politics have become so toxic and so mean. We can't be that. We can't be the West Sacramento that so many of us have been in for so many folks in this room, on all sides of this issue, who've grown up here and their parents grew up here. And we won't be that place anymore if that's the way we approach our disagreements around these issues. So I've been ashamed to watch how this debate has played out in our community, and it's not because of the project, it's the specific project itself, or its location, or whether it should have 2 water fountains or 1, or it's not any of the details. It's how, as a community, do we engage these issues in a meaningful and real way, and how do we deal with the fact that we can't all always win on every single topic, especially when we draw bright lines in the sand. That the only answer is it must be moved. Why aren't you? And we've got to figure out other ways to do this. So the managers described the process that's coming forward, but. I would just, hope that we will find, and that the folks on all sides, but particularly those who've been opposed to the project, will look in your hearts around what kind of community you want this to be. It is at virtually every single elementary school in the city. The playground is immediately adjacent to a park, to a major arterial street, or to a trail. We have extensive experience with the location of facilities just like this throughout the city. The Westfield project is one of the most award-winning projects in the city. It's been featured repeatedly as a statewide model for joint use of school and trail projects. So that's why the response hasn't been, yes, we will move instantly, because it matters that this project is only possible because volunteers, just like everyone else in this room, who've said we want to help our community, have stepped up to do it. And I know how hard they've worked, and I know the poor small businesses. And Mike may have, said at the beginning he signed up for a different reason. But to watch other small businesses be attacked and boycotts being urged of them for the sole reason that they said that they would step up to support and sponsor a bike trail project, I don't know. It's not the place I thought we were, and I hope I hope as the conversations continue and the discussions keep forward around how to position the project, that we find our better angels around how to deal with this topic without making crazy accusations about each other's motives and meanings and pedophiles and sexual predators and all of that. We have a tremendous experience about what this means. And we watched for generations, not just in our own city, but around the country, that language being used as a reason why kids shouldn't bike and walk to school. And the result is kids don't bike and walk to school anymore. And they weren't at serious risk, but now they are at risk of diabetes and health issues, and we got to do better. So we're not taking this up tonight. It's not on our agenda. The council has previously greenlighted the project and the Measure E funding for it. It will need to return to us for the final design specs and all of that. But I just hope that we will, everyone that's been involved in the conversation, that we will keep searching for how to engage in a way that's more West Sacramentan in its character and in its heart. So, all right, with that, we're at item 1B, which is council communications. Are there reports or other communications this evening? Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 issues. The Yolo County Housing Commission met on August 23rd. The only significant item there was to review and approve a resolution for the Section 8 management assessment. Outside of that, there was mostly house cleaning issues. And also, I attended as an alternate for the Yolo Habitat Conservancy. There was a couple of actions there that were taken. First, we received an update on the public review draft of the HCP, which is a Habitat Conservation Plan. And it was the end of the 90-day period just ended for public comment on August 30th. So no negative comments have been received so far. They expect to receive some comments for requests for clarification. But the next step is going to be to incorporate all the public comments into the final EIR, and hopefully that'll get done this year. And I know Councilmember Ledesma has been reporting extensively on this issue in the past. And the other action was we just received an update on the Yolo Regional Conservation Investment Strategy. That's it.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Sandine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency met on August 23rd, and we initiated a discussion about future funding requirements and assessment formation to support the implementation of the authorized federal project and the West Sacramento Levee Improvement Program. We also heard updates on the progress of the project, and I visited the site with General Manager of RD900, Kenrick Jamison, and he's also the lead for with Safeca, to see the slurry wall work being done adjacent to Bees Lake, and viewed one of the borrow sites as well. Earlier tonight, the Port Commission met, and we approved a grant agreement with the Natural Resources Agency and accepted a $272,000 award from the Surrendered and Abandoned Vessel Exchange Program from the State of California Department of Parks and Recreation Division of Boating and Waterways. Last week, I attended a California Promise Pathways to Student Success conference and was able to engage with others around the state about our Kids Home Run initiative. Ian Winbrock from the city served on a plenary panel and shared our work with about 450 to 500 or so attendees. The subcommittee for our council retreat, which is made up of the mayor and me, met with the city manager and one of our assistant city managers to start a dialogue about the retreat format and potential changes as well. That's my report.
Great, thank you.
That I squeaked out.
I would just add that with the slurry wall and the work that's underway, we did also host the primary staffer for the Senate Appropriations Committee, I think on the minority side, as well, for a tour of the project along with the Corps. It's impressive. So, Councilmember Orozco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one small report from the Yolo County Children's Alliance, specifically that they are working on the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act. And we are looking to partner with local businesses to help employ 16 to 24-year-old young folks, students and the like, to give them opportunities to engage in professional development and improve their educational opportunities. It's a win-win for both our city as well as our youth. So if you have any interest in our local businesses interested in partnering with YCCA, please call 916-572-0560 or get more information at yolokids.org. In addition, one of our speakers earlier from the public did mention a supply drive that YCCA is currently engaged in, and that is for the Community Giveaway Day on November 18th. For more information, please visit the website. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The SACOG hosted a civic lab on innovation the latter part of last month. I attended it, but also one of our staffer from in transportation that's handling the innovation project. Yeah, so Sarah was invited to lead one of the discussion groups at the Civic Lab. It was one of very few cities that was engaged in doing that. So it was a successful afternoon of identifying some potential innovation initiatives on a regional scale that could be piloted, and there's still a lot of interest in having West Sacramento be one of the major pilot sites for some of the Civic Lab efforts. And then the regional mayors, Mayor Rohan of Roseville and Mayor Steinberg and I hosted the regional mayors at the city of Rancho Cordova last month, where our two major focus areas were homelessness and neighborhood stabilization, with some reports from what's happening in Rancho Cordova on neighborhood stabilization and then on homelessness. some potential partnerships and coordination strategies with the counties, Sacramento County in particular, but with the other counties as well on some of the key services. And then the other major topic was we did a presentation on the Kids Home Run. We've been doing regular presentations on components of the Kids Home Run over the last two meetings of the regional mayors. But this time was particular focus on the digital badging efforts that are underway and its connection to the College Promise piece, since the College Promise is also underway in a reduced form in the city of Rancho Cordova. So good showcase for the work that's happening here. All right, if there's no further communications, item 1C is appointments to boards and commissions. We have none tonight. So that brings us to the consent agenda, which is items 2 through 8. And we have some minor amendments on agenda item number 5 that are at the council desk that have been provided by the city manager. Are there any items on consent for removal or any items for separate question or comment? So, all right, item 7 then is consideration of approval, of request for approval of the age-friendly action plan. Mayor Pro Tem Johansson.
Yeah, thank you. No, I just wanted to comment, from the last time we looked at this at the last council meeting, I know staff had prepared sections for both the use cases and the principles. I just wanted to comment, that's, I think, a very good addition to this, because I think, with the 10 or so use cases really kind of help, shows an example of how this plan is going to be able to help folks in real situations, because I think we all have, with a plan of this size, exactly how is that going to affect people on an individual basis. I think you did a good job of kind of getting a good cross-section of potential use cases here. I mean, they're for discussion purposes, but I think it's a good start. And then also, I think the mayor brought this up as well with the having the principles, the addition of the principal list. I think that's going to be really important as we go through and then have, these principles as we're going through each of the projects of the city, how exactly would that interact with this plan? And I think that's going to go a long way to help implement this as well. So I just wanted to thank you for the additional work that you've done on there, and thank the folks who've worked on this and the plan.
Okay. Councilmember Sandine, who's been co-chairing the work with Mayor Pro Tem Johansson, would definitely want to say something, but she's a bit under the weather, and it's affecting her. She's having to choose her words carefully, or the amount of words carefully. So I completely agree. Thanks for the changes in the evolution of the document since our last meeting. It's a really strong product, and continue to hope we'll be through the department directors and with you helping staff in the whole organization figure out and understand how to deploy these principles and the policies in their daily work on an action basis. So that the report's not self-executing. It's going to require real people, including us, including the staff, including our community partners and volunteers to really bring it to life. But it's a really excellent product. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So if we have no further questions on the consent agenda, is there a motion?
With
the amendments?
Second?
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Orozco, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johansson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. That motion carries. That brings us to item 9, which is a public hearing and consideration of Resolution 17-62, amending the City of West Sacramento Book of Fees for various regulatory activities, products, and services. Ms. Blumberg.
Yeah, tonight staff is bringing to you an item that would require a public hearing before the council considers amendment of the city's book of fees to add a specific fine schedule for our newly initiated parking meter program. So as you know, on July 1st, the pay-by-plate parking meter program started in the Bridge District, and we had instructed the parking enforcement staff from City of Sacramento to hold off on issuing fines for 2 weeks until July 15th. The first week in August, we were informed that they were still issuing warnings. So we met with them to figure out why that was the case and determined that while the city council had put into the municipal code an allowance for parking meter fines, they felt that the reference in our book of fees was not specific enough. So given the noticing requirement that we have for amendment of book of fees, this was the earliest we could get back to council to get that amended in. That said, should the council approve Resolution 1762, commencement of citations could commence tomorrow, September 7th, if those situations come up. And as an added note, we have started regular meetings with City of Sacramento's parking enforcement staff just to make sure that in all areas where they do enforcement that we have clear lines of communication.
All right, any questions for staff before we open the public hearing? Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Yeah, Paul, just on the the add-on, so what is that? Is that on the add-on, the $15 on each of these?
Yeah. So the add-on is kind of one of those quirky things where the state of California gets revenue for something completely unrelated. So the add-on of $15 goes for, my understanding is for interim courthouse funding and for juvenile correctional facility funding.
Okay, and it's mandatory?
Pardon me?
Mandatory?
Yeah, it's not an option. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Right, with that, then we'll open the public hearing on item 9. We don't have any requests to speak, but because it is a public hearing, does anyone wish to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing and return it to the council. Any further question, discussion, or for a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Orozco, seconded by Councilmember Sandin. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Brings us to item 10, which is consideration of proposed issuance of West Sacramento Financing Authority Water Revenue Bond Series 2017 and West Sacramento Financing Authority Sewer Revenue Bond Series 2017, and update and discussion of the Washington District Infrastructure Plan. Mr. Blumberg.
So, as admin services looks to issue debt, we usually like to get to you with an information item to describe the proposed issuance, what the proceeds would be used for. And in this case, we wanted to talk to you about a couple of policy issues that relate to what are the proposed water and sewer revenue bonds that we are proposing to issue this year. So, last December, when the City Council heard a report on the proposed adjustments to both water and sewer rates, there was an identification of the need to cover O&M expenses for the system, to establish capital and operating reserves, and to cover debt service on debt that would be issued for the CIP, for water and sewer system capital improvements. So at that time, the council instructed staff to conduct a 218 process, which was done, and following the public hearing in June, the council approved rate increases for both the water and sewer system that would be implemented incrementally over 5 years. And at that time, the council also asked that staff come back annually on approval of those increases. And at that time, in June, council approved only the first year, implementation of the first year of increases for 17-18. So in coming back to you with recommendations on both water and sewer bonds, we wanted to get direction on a couple things. So on the water bonds, the direction was to generate $15 million in bond proceeds to fund the 2-year water system CIP. And so we've looked at that. The finance team has been working on this, and we believe that we can do so, but one of the issues that came up that we wanted to point out to you is we basically do modeling, and what we try to do, we're very conservative in some ways, there's the concept of net revenues after you pay for O&M, after you establish your reserves and whatnot. The amount that's left over for debt service should be 125% of the annual debt. So for both water and sewer system, we're using that as a metric. And so in doing so, we think that in authorizing $15 million in water system bonds, that you would predetermine a second-year rate increase. Now, we don't believe that you would be predetermining rate increases for the final year 3, 4, and 5, but we think that you would be looking at rate increases for the second year, consistent with what was approved as part of the 218 process. But we did want to point that fact out to you. With regard to the sewer bonds, what was discussed back in December and again in June was that there would be a $5 million issuance to cover the adopted 2-year capital improvement program for the sewer system. Now, although we've looked at that, we see a project out there, or a series of projects bundled, which we believe are clearly identified in the master plan, and there is the ability to fund those and to advance the actual construction and implementation of the sewer improvements. So Katie Jacobson is going to talk a little bit about what that project is, but I wanted to talk about the implications financially. So in going from a $5 million bond issuance to a $9 million issuance, in other words, that project's about $4 million, we can do so and still meet our ratio of 125% coverage with just the 17-18 rate increase. So you wouldn't be predetermining rate increases for the next 4 years. And the reason that's why is we did some debt restructuring, as we tend to do. So we were able to pay off the 1978 sewer bonds, thereby improving the ratios so that we can include the bonding amount on the rate increases that you've authorized to be implemented already. So that said, I think that the project in question, which is the Washington Neighborhood Infrastructure Project, from the standpoint from finance, advancing sewer system improvements that are in the master plan, it kind of makes sense if you could do so without defunding other projects and otherwise modifying your CIP. So we, in this case, I think, you could have your cake and eat it too, if the council directs us to increase the amount of the bond issue to $9 million. But I think it's important for you to kind of hear what that project is. It would have to be amended into the CIP. But if we are so directed, then we would come back to you with a bond authorization for $9 million. Alternatively, we would keep it at $5 million. But with that, I think Katie Jacobson wants to talk a little bit about the project.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. As part of the item tonight, staff is presenting a brief update on the Grand Gateway Washington Infrastructure Project to highlight a project that's being recommended for priority use of some of the ratepayer bond proceeds. Although the details on the project and recommended actions for award of contract for the Washington Grand Gateway Infrastructure will be heard by council at a future council meeting. In June of 2015, the city, in partnership with Jamboree Housing, was awarded $6.7 million of affordable housing and sustainable infrastructure grant funds, with $4.1 million programmed for circulation improvements. The grant funds were awarded based on a demonstration that the improvements would result in greenhouse gas reductions, and it was based on a formula. As council had just approved the Washington Realized Sustainable Community Strategy in February of 2015, at the same time that the NOFA on this grant was released, staff was able to transition the circulation design products that had been in that Washington Realized document into a grant proposal that focused on the Grand Gateway circulation, including a new crossing and signal on Tower Bridge Gateway and a new streetcar stop. The project will construct new Grand Gateway circulation, including a new 7th Street, a new signalized crossing on Tower Bridge Gateway, and a streetcar stop, as I said. It will build a separated bicycle track on West Capitol, remove the dual intersection on Fifth, and create more bike and ped-friendly crossing, as well as resurface Fifth Street and provide for one-way eastbound traffic on West Capitol. Evaluation of underground infrastructure was conducted during the Washington Realized planning process. The findings indicated that infrastructure deficiencies had been identified since 1996 and were and are a major barrier to achieving transit-oriented development. And because it is typical practice within the city to, wherever possible for economies when we are doing a roadway project, to consider, given the mobilization and equipment and overhead, what underground infrastructure might be able to be done at the same time. And given the council's actions and approvals of the Washington Realized Action Plan and recommendation, the staff recommended that the grant be matched with Measure G funds in order to accomplish the underground infrastructure. The sewer improvements included in the infrastructure project are shown in red. The facilities in this district have not had regular recurring repair and replacement. Some of the pipes are well over 80 years old and failing. Washington identified that this was a major challenge to achieving TOD development, and that absent some of these improvements, some of the larger prime development parcels will be so overburdened with off-site requirements that they are unlikely to be economically feasible for investment. This is a history of the project. As I said, the Climate Investment Fund is funding the project. It's formulaic. It was based on reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, and so adding infrastructure scope, it wasn't possible for staff to receive more funds than we received, since it was really based on circulation improvements. So it was added to the scope of work as it's foundational to achieving the council's vision for Washington, and as I indicated, would be much more expensive to do as a standalone project. It was originally funded fully by the Community Investment Fund due to the return on this investment and the impact that is projected from it, because it removes barriers to development. It facilitates new investment in Washington, and it allows the city to market its Grand Gateway parcels, which will bring in additional revenue to the city. The sewer repair and replacement projects that are in the scope of work in Washington, as Paul mentioned, are in the sewer master plan due to their failing condition, and that fund is the appropriate source for repair and replacement of these pipes and capacity improvements. The project budget has increased for many reasons, but of significance during design phase, it was found that the water table is above the depth of the sewer pipes, which triggers significant OSHA requirements for shoring up of the trenches, for dewatering, for pumping, et cetera. This caused about a $300 increase in the unit cost for the sewer element of the project. So as I indicated, staff will bring forward the specific council actions with regard to this project at a future meeting, possibly at the next meeting. But staff at this time is including for council consideration the recommendation that $4.15 million of these bond proceeds be programmed for the Grand Gateway Washington infrastructure project. That concludes.
All right, are there questions for staff?
A quick one.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Yeah, thank you. Katie, on the, it may not be directly related to this, but when we're going through and redoing some of the infrastructure in this neighborhood, we do have the kind of the dig once policy, and there is the need to, when these old pipes come up, to put in additional infrastructure. Is our communication network included in that in terms of laying fiber down at the same time to this neighborhood?
And, well, we are laying fiber where we're building the new roadways, and through the work on the Tower Court parcels or the Grand Gateway parcels where we're building new roadways, and into West Cap improvements. The rest of the neighborhood, we were initially had it in the scope of work, but we had to defer it due to the PG&E requirements. It was impossible to perform within our timeline and meet those requirements. And we knew the project was already going to come in over budget, and that would have added a significant cost.
To lay fiber down?
Yes, because of the need to reconnect all the existing businesses and households. It requires that you have to have an agreement with each of the property owners at the time, and that if their panel is not appropriately sized, it be upgraded at that time. So that it would have, I have been working a lot with the community and the neighbors. They very much are interested in it. So I have committed that staff would support doing an underground district, which would probably be the best way to approach it. That can also be done with CFD, can be formed to fund that work, and that would give us time to do it appropriately. It's difficult in an old neighborhood, began in the 1860s, that some of the services are substandard.
Yeah, it's just that we don't have that many opportunities like this when we're tearing up an entire section of town to kind of do it right for the future.
I agree. I wish that we had been able to do it.
So, Paul, if we didn't do the resizing of the sewer bond, do we just have more money each year than we would have had in the year-end balance in the sewer fund?
Well, let me put it this way. I mean, it's really the ability to, I think, advance the bond proceeds and to do more bonding is related to getting rid of those bonds that would have otherwise been paid off in 1819. And we determined that there was actually funds in the sewer system that had been restricted for a debt service reserve. And I think since it preceded kind of cityhood, there wasn't a lot of information about what that restricted money was, and we did a little forensics, and we determined it was for these bonds. We went, well, why don't we just see if we negotiate with Bercadia, who's the lender, and see if we could do an early payoff. By doing that, we create the capacity to issue more debt, giving the revenues that we have. So nothing would change in terms of what is going to O&M or the reserves that will be created. But it's just a ratio that allows us to issue more debt at this time.
But the paying of the debt still requires, regardless of what our debt limits are and all that, we still have to pay for it. So the dollars that we would be spending in 2018 on to pay the debts, to pay the debt service, if we did not add this $4 million, it would just increase the sewer fund
balance.
Year-end
That's
balance.
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And what's the magnitude of that? I mean, what was the annual debt service associated with the $4 million?
With the $4 million, oh goodness.
Roughly,
I'm not sure if I have come prepared to answer that question in terms of the differential. All I can tell you is that we ran it one way and ran it the other way, and we were really just looking at the system's ability to support it from net revenues, and we have very high ratios of debt service coverage, so that we're able to do that.
I asked because, we struggled, the council struggled mightily with the issue of the rate increases in the first place. And so, I think we want to be careful to be living at the edge of our annual revenues and then be back in a year and a half from now saying, okay, you approved those rate increases, we need to do some more. Not necessarily to cover this $4 million, but simply because we don't have the cushion that we might have otherwise had had we not expanded our debt service obligation.
Well, if it gives you an assurance, once we paid off the 1978 bonds and we took that money that would have gone to debt service and we applied it to new bond debt, our ratio is still over, well, it's close to 200%. So we're not near the edge at all in terms of the metric we used, which is 125%.
Right. I don't mean the metric. I don't mean the edge for debt capacity. I just mean the edge in terms of how much money we have in the sewer fund to do the things that we're committed to do in the sewer master plan, both in capital and in operating.
Yeah, I believe that this recommendation would allow the city council to make decisions in the future about whether they are to implement the rate increases in year 2 through 5, based on other issues that may come up. For instance, we have a capital reserve for pay-go expenses that's funded at $1 million a year, but it's assumed to be funded up front, and there may be draws if there are emergency repairs that aren't included in the CIP. So, it may be that there are repairs, emergency repairs we don't anticipate that would require us to replenish that fund somewhere down the way, or if revenues, sewer fund revenues don't materialize, if the operating reserve gets hit, you'd have to replenish that. But the ratio net revenue, again, is so high, we don't believe that there is any concern about not achieving the policy directive from last December and the previous workshop meetings where the council really laid down criteria for the financing section of the master plan.
So we don't know the number. Say the annual debt service with the $4 million is $250,000, and I just to have an example number. So in year 3, whether or not when we have a rate increase scheduled but not yet implemented, if we had that $250,000 uncommitted, as opposed to this direction, which would take us down the path of committing it to a resized sewer bond, doesn't that reduce the need for the scheduled increase in year 3 and 4?
Yeah, well, right. Let me try to explain it. We believe that the ratio of available revenues will be so high with a 17-18 increase you have authorized us to implement that there would be no need to implement the other increases unless there are strong financial reasons that would arise through the budget process. And again, just to outline what those could be is unanticipated repair. So the opportunity cost, if it were, would be to have a fund balance available. Instead of doing the additional $4 million in bonds, your fund balance would be available for the unforeseen. And to replenish those reserve funds, both operating and capital reserve, because that's really where it would hit. Or if there were a big downturn in the economy or some big, I don't know, NorCal Beverage is one of our big sewer, top 10 sewer. If you lost the revenue from one of the top 10, those are the types of things that's the opportunity cost. You wouldn't have the fund balance to deal with those types of situations.
Okay. You're now forecasting no rate increase going to be necessary in years 3 and 4.
That's right. We feel really especially strong about the sewer bonds and what we're showing in the modeling as our net revenue coverage. It's very high, and again, that's because we got rid of the previous debt.
Okay. All right. Further questions? All right, so this was workshop only, sufficient direction? Great, all right, that brings us then to council calendar. Ms. Berlin?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Here are a few dates that might be of interest to you. First, the Public Financing Authority on September 20th, that is canceled. And, the event you're all waiting for, the YED Fall 2017. Topic is cannabis regulation. It'll be in Davis at the Veterans Memorial Center at 4 o'clock. And then at the end of the month, we have the West Sacramento Cyclocross on September 30th and October 1st.
All right, any questions on the calendar? City manager report?
As you know, Mayor and council members, the legislative session ends a week from Friday on September 15th. We've summarized some of the bills that we're monitoring. That memo is before you. If you have any questions, we'll continue to, if you have any questions, we can take those, or we'll continue to monitor these and keep you apprised of any changes.
Okay, any questions for the city manager? City attorney report. Staff direction from members of the council. And we have no future agenda item requests. So So Councilmember Sandin moves and Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson seconds. The meeting be adjourned. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.